The content presented is for entertainment purposes only. Some content may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. So today I really wanted to talk a little bit about the new documentary that came out by Candace Owens over at livewire.com called The Greatest Lie Ever Sold. It talks a little bit about Black Lives Matter, about the organization, now that their past tax documents have been made available and open to the public, a little bit about that, and as a little bit as well on George Floyd and some of the other things that have gone on that a lot of people aren't talking about. And I thought that this came to light, giving a lot more information. And it kind of begs the question, what really happened there? Also a little bit about Olivia Wilde and Jordan Peterson feud. That's something I had no idea was going on. And I just had a glimpse of it later this week. And I was like, oh, wow, that's got to be something interesting to read and talk about. So I had to find an article, and I'm going to go over a little bit about that drama as well as talk a little bit about some of the current presidential misdealings that are a possibility when it comes to this whole laptop, when it comes to this whole, collusion with parties overseas. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So days after Candace Owens set the internet ablaze with matching white Lives Matter t-shirts alongside billionaire rapper Kanye West, the Daily Wire star announced the release of her hotly anticipated Black Lives Matter documentary, The Greatest Lie Ever Sold. The BLM expose, available exclusively for Daily Wire Plus members on October 12th, takes a deep dive into the multi-million-dollar grift of the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation and its former executive director, Patrisse Cullors. And I know this is probably going to upset some people to kind of hear these things, and I get it. And I would, encourage people to look a little bit more deeper in these things, not just the surface level stuff, and then, give this documentary a chance, because, just like, other documentaries, it definitely begs the question exactly what's going on, with these organizations, with these individuals that are portrayed a certain way in a certain life, and seemingly a certain narrative in mainstream media and corporatized media. And it's going to be interesting to see as time goes on exactly what's going to happen now that this information has come to light. And what intrigues me about of late is the blatant "we can advocate but you can't" narrative, as there is an outcry for Owens and West t-shirts. What is sad is that the radical left is using their voices in an attempt to diminish or silence others when they say that only certain voices should be heard. And I think it's important to hear many voices. I believe that it's imperative to hear refuting voices, admonishment, as well as individuals that even collaborate and agree with the information that you think is pertinent and is true. And just like the wonderful Ben Shapiro says, facts don't have feelings. So it's important to find the truth. It's important to really dive deep and try to figure out, what's going on with these things. And so I have a little clip of a video I wanted to share with you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch this over to our view here. And this is from the Tucker Carlson show. And I I only watch these things lightly. Tucker Carlson's not my favorite. But it's definitely something to say for this particular video that I found. So let's go ahead and watch that real quick and discuss.
Candace Owens is the host of Candace. She joins us tonight. Candace, thanks so much for coming on. Maybe I'm being too soft, but anybody who can talk, America's woke corporate structure into sending close to $100 million on the basis of that lame rap kind of gets my respect in a way.
She has my respect because she's unapologetic in her approach. She's telling you what she is. She's a Marxist. So Marxists steal money from other people and they enrich themselves until the people that they stole from are poor. And so she has stolen money from other people on the pretext of a lie that is Black Lives Matter. And she's enriched herself and she's brought 4 homes. I mean, you have to kind of appreciate the
4
honesty.
homes.
She's not hiding by any means, you know.
With
and
the BLM money.
I tend to agree with you here. She's a communist through and through, and she's been unbelievably unapologetic in her approach.
Oh, wow.
Al Sharpton must be looking at this and saying, like, I've done this for 40 years. Where did I go wrong? I don't have a house in Topanga Canyon.
Right, exactly right. It's completely ridiculous.
I know what kind of foundation I'm going to make.
Corporations are standing behind her, which is incredibly interesting. And you pointed to something really important. You know, these corporations that are pouring millions and millions of dollars into Black Lives Matter, and you're correct, they said we raised more than $90 million. How much more, we will never know, but $90 million, of which $21 million
only 90 million was
claimed, according to Black Lives Matter themselves,
so far in
their
taxes.
Building the Black movement. Like, I don't even know what that means. $25 million going to building a Black movement. Apparently, the Black movement was Patrice moving herself, a Black woman moving herself into other areas of the communities of people that she claims are oppressing Black Americans. She's fearful of white people. White people are so bad. Well, why doesn't she want to live amongst Black people? Why is she choosing to move herself into an all-white neighborhood? These are important questions.
Yeah, I think they are.
That is an important question.
Topanga Canyon,
yeah, why would you move yourself
really quickly,
into an all-white neighborhood
if
you're that afraid of white people?
Was
like,
just reflexive. This
that doesn't make any sense.
Does sound like it raises questions about the competence of the police officer and what's going on with the Minneapolis Police Department. Maybe they've lowered the standards. Maybe there aren't, enough cops. Who knows? We should find out, I think. But looting in immediate response to that, why would we put up with that?
We shouldn't put up with that, but the reason why we do is because the Democrats see some advantage.
We shouldn't put up with it because, as of right now, between Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they've destroyed over $1 billion worth of businesses.
It signals to them that they are now allowed to run into the streets and grab whatever they want, whether it's from Target, whether it's from Walmart. And what's remarkable also is that these corporations are standing behind Black Lives Matter, right? They're pouring money into these corporations.
Yeah, that's surprising.
And I remember most notably during the George Floyd riots,
until their business gets broken into.
Said, we don't even care that we were rioted and looted because we just
notice they're not breaking into like Starbucks and Burger King or KFC.
So that means that a corporation must be getting something else, right? What is it? What are they investing in when they invest in the lie that is Black Lives Matter? What is the return? I think Josh Hawley alluded to it in the previous segment, and I think you're onto something when you say that the corporations seek to control this country. They're willing to give up
that
money.
I agree with, for sure.
They're willing to let their stores be rioted and looted.
Corporations are looking to control this country.
That they're gaining from these
if not, they
riots
already are or have been for many, many years.
And that is control over this country. It's power, and it's sinister, and it's sick.
And if some Pakistani liquor store owner is destroyed in the process, like, you think Jeff Bezos cares? No. Candace Owens, so nicely put, as always. It's great to see you. Thank you.
Yeah.
What?
So that's something that is kind of interesting. Because corporations are getting to that point where they have quite a bit of power, not only over people. Oh my goodness, what's my computer doing? It's a new update. It's doing things. But it's also doing the things that I don't want it to do. And now I've lost everything. There's my outline. There's a couple of things there, and I think that something that's really important of that is that, just recently, with all these like lootings and stuff that have happened, they have allowed individuals to be able to steal up to was it like $900 out in California, and as long as it's under that $900 limit, they don't get prosecuted. So they don't go to jail, they don't get arrested, they don't get prosecuted for looting or stealing. And what's really interesting is it's put a lot of businesses, out of work. Like you can't run a business if all of your inventory keeps getting stolen. And so a lot of these places have shut down. A lot of businesses have moved to different places that are more on the red side rather than the blue. And unfortunately, I'm sure it's very much hurting the Californian economy. And what's sad about these demonstrations that have happened, that have occurred over the last couple of years, they've been very, very intense. I mean, there's cars being overturned, there's stuff being lit on fire, there's businesses completely smashed and looted. And nobody wants to talk about that $1 billion mark. Nobody wants to talk about how that's not okay in society. And those individuals, I mean, I still to this day don't know like how many Black Lives Matter or Antifa members that have attended these different places, how many of those individuals have been taken to court or prosecuted or even put in jail. And it's just, it stands to reason that, you know, all things that should be equal, why aren't we applying the same rules over individuals that have quite literally put businesses out of work, you know, versus the things that have happened, you know, comparing, contrasting the things that have happened during the January 6th time, where individuals did go inside, they did break windows and the things that transpired there. I think, you know, a couple people were hurt. I don't know if somebody was shot. I have conflicting reports that somebody was shot and or killed. I have reports that that's a lie. So it's kind of hard to know exactly, you know, what's real, if things are being applied equally to all groups of individuals who are protesting and doing these different things. And it's really interesting because these families are being, you know, destroyed. Like these people are losing, you know, income because they aren't able to go to work. They're losing opportunities that they could have. And it's also putting their character in jeopardy as well, and for future opportunities. And that's the part that's unfortunate about this whole counterculture, this cancel culture, excuse me. And it begs the question, you know, is this what we want in society? Is this what we need? Is we need more criminals and we need more people free, you know, to riot and to loot and to do these things? Now, it's a constitutional right to be able to have free speech and to be able to protest and to disagree. But where's that fine line? Like, when does it get to the point when people start throwing rocks and bricks through windows? When does it get to the point where people are throwing, you know, gasoline bombs or, you know, what are they called? Molotov cocktails through business glass windows and burning businesses down. And this isn't the first time that it's happened. It happened back in the day in California during the times where they were having issues with the Asian communities and stuff and things that were going on during that time as well. There's a lot of businesses that needed to be protected. And I can't remember if there was a comedian that was talking about how his family, you know, would literally hunker down and close everything up and, you know, protect themselves with rifles and firearms because of the riots and stuff that were happening around that time. And so we kind of come back to the things that are going on with Black Lives Matter and these different organizations and the things that have been going on behind closed doors. And I think, you know, just like we need transparency with these, you know, potentially, you know, fraudulent, I mean, potentially and allegedly fraudulent organizations. Not only do we need transparency with those, but we also need transparency with big tech. We need transparency, you know, with Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and all these different things that have been going on, because if we don't, then they are going to continue to get away with the things that they're getting away with. Same thing with big pharma. I think that's something that I believe that the right and the left can resoundingly, unanimously, you know, accept that there's a lot of shenanigans going on in the health industry. And who's doing, I mean, seemingly not too many people are doing anything about it right now. And they're still making billions and billions of dollars and even putting people at risk and even killing people. And what all they're doing is they're paying their dues. They're paying their, you know, their court mandated, I can't find the word right now, but the court mandated payment that they're supposed to give in response to this, to those families and everything. And they still make profit. Like they, I have heard And what I understand is that they do have these meetings behind closed doors and decide, well, we're still going to profit anyway, so let's go through with it and continue to push out, a potentially dangerous drug that's supposed to be helping, but it's also hurting a small, percentage of people that take it. But I digress. So back to the film. In the film, Owens offers viewers the true story behind the life and death of George Floyd and the rise of the movement, with never-before-seen interviews from insiders and experts. Riots, violence, and biblical heresy. That is the true story behind the George Floyd story. The Candace host says in that documentary, "You look around you and you see what is left, a story that has made its way around the world. Do you see $90 million invested in this community? Where did that money go?" The company noted that the film takes a peek inside the curious role of big names like Chrissy Teigen in perpetuating the damage done to small business across the country, and promises to leave no stone unturned and no receipt unread. Owen dropped the trailer of the documentary Thursday on Twitter, rebuffing a Black Lives Matter tweet from actor and singer Jaden Smith. "Ironically, you suffer from a life of tremendous white privilege," Owens told Smith. "You say Black Lives Matter, not because you mean it, but because you hope it provides you legitimacy with a community you never knew." Shots fired, Candace Owens. Wow. She is definitely one to not shy away from her hot takes. So how much money has Black Lives Matter accumulated? Over $90 million over the last, so many years it's been active, as well as $42 million in assets. So that's like buildings and homes and, communities and other stuff. So has the organization spent any of their money improperly? And that's kind of one of the questions that's posed in this documentary. So as far as we know, from this documentary, yes, they have spent tens of millions of dollars of their donations improperly. According to Candace Owens, her new documentary, they believe that the money has been spent on giving to many other organizations associated with Black Lives Matter, as well as nonprofit companies that seem to either not exist or do not seem to be active in their activism. They also believe that they had purchased several mansions in which were labeled as safe havens for Black lives. However, upon inspection, seems to be either single-family living spaces or completely vacant, which has been crazy to think, that this organization, who is supposedly, helping, these disaffected, Black Americans, and it's not even helping Black America. And seemingly this organization has become a fraudulent company or even a scam. And the person that owns this company has now purchased 4 very large homes and even mansions. And so the documentary, it goes over good and bad parts of George Floyd's past, his subsequent death via overdose, and evidences which disagree with the current narrative around his death. Just like my feelings on the documentary of 2,000 Mules, I don't feel like the greatest lie ever sold is the smoking gun to refute what's been reported on the George Floyd situation, but I feel it's enough to take a second look at the situation, as well as the guilty verdict on Chauvin's sentence. Whether that happens or not, only time will tell. And what's really interesting is that it does show several different angles. Like, I think it has at least 2 different angles of how Chauvin was allegedly holding down Mr. Floyd. And what's really interesting about that is that it begs the question of whether he was actually not able to breathe or he was able to breathe. They had I believe it was the coroner that did the autopsy on George Floyd. They alleged that they believe that there was not any kind of neck or back trauma, and that he actually died due to overdose of having a blend of fentanyl and amphetamines, which was 2 or 3 times over the overdose limit. And so it was basically what I understand is it was just a matter of time before that individual would pass away because of the intense amount of drugs that were in his system. And that was a subsequent reason why he passed away after he got to the hospital, and not because of what happened, the way that Chauvin, held him down. And what's really interesting, and people, will probably disagree with my take here, but, I watched, those both angles, and I would listen to him saying, I can't breathe. But he was, saying that several times, and I could watch him and I could see that he could still expand his airways. He could still breathe. I mean, obviously if you can't breathe, it would be more shallow, and it would be, or you would get to the point where he would have to take big gaps of air and really push hard back on Chauvin's leg in order to bring air in. However, it seemed that he was able to breathe, throughout the whole time that he held him down for several minutes with his knee. From the second look of it, it looked like it was more closer to his shoulder blade rather than his neck. And even if he did have it closer to his neck, they still didn't believe that would cause him not to breathe or be the cause of death. And these are very interesting things. Now, between the different articles and things that I've read online in conjunction with this documentary, The Greatest Lie That Was Ever Sold, I definitely think they need to take a second look at this. I think they need to maybe even think about having maybe not a second trial, but maybe like a whatever the technical lawful term, to look back on something and see if it's still valid or not. Because something's really interesting about our law system and everything else is it's not perfect. And the reason that it's not perfect is because it's ran by human beings, and human beings are inherently imperfect. We're going to, misjudge. We're going to misremember. Memory is a fickle thing. I mean, even recalling memories, you're never going to recall it the same way twice, it seems like. And when you have people, especially with witness testimonies, they're going to misjudge and misread. A lot of times people will go off of emotions rather than what's objectively going on in that particular situation. Especially when your adrenaline's going crazy, like that's the only thing you can think of at the time. And so it's definitely something to say for, they may need to take a second look at this. Because I kind of feel like the evidence and the portrayal of the narrative that was portrayed in this particular documentary, it definitely begs the question, who was, George Floyd, and what was up with his past. They also talked about the different things that he had struggled with in the past with, violent robberies, armed robbery, drugs. And it's seemingly like this is the picture of, the consequences of white supremacy, white privilege and whatever, racism in America today. And, I've said many times in many different podcasts, where I believe that there still is individual racism out there. I'm sure there are people, or even maybe some, black op organizations that have, these kinds of feelings towards Black America, and other people who are not white. I definitely agree those things are out there, but I definitely agree with Candace Owens that it's definitely very much low on the list of things that we need to take care of, because that's not the most thing that's, that's coming against Black America and anybody else that's struggling in these times. And I really do believe that I can't remember his name right now. I really just mentioned him just earlier. Mr. Ben Shapiro had a really good point. He believes that there's 3 things that you should do and you can get yourself out of poverty, over time and in a relatively quick way though. And that is obviously to graduate high school, get a job, and then wait until you get married to start having children. I think those are 3 really important beliefs that people should have. Because I believe then you kind of have a good timeline from one to the other instead of just jump starting into, parenthood while you're in high school. I feel like, it's a hard situation to get through. A lot of times people that do end up getting pregnant eventually, don't always graduate high school. I mean, hopefully they do. But it's definitely something to say for individuals who wait. And I think they're also happier for that as well. And that's something I kind of wish I did. I didn't lose I'll just be honest with you guys. I didn't lose my virginity until I was 26, somewhere between 26, 27, 28, somewhere around there. And I was looking for the right person, and at the time I felt like the person that I was in love with at the time, we had talked about getting married and we were talking about going and looking at rings, and we had an opportunity and we did take that. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, you'll always remember your first time, and your second time. But I kind of wish that I had that wonderful moment with my wife, there's something to say for people who are able to, keep their virginity until they are married and then they prepare themselves to start having kids and they decide when that's going to be best for them. I think there's definitely a stronger connection. I feel like, I think that would definitely have been a much wonderful and beautiful thing. And maybe I'd be more attached, I guess. I would think, I mean, I'm only guessing, of course, but, I would think that you would have a greater connection because that's the only person that you shared that wonderful first moment with. And then you continue with your life with that person because you're married with that person. You're going to continue. There's definitely something to say for that. And I think that might be something that might be a goal that might be achievable and would be something beautiful for people in the future. But I digress. So the feud between Olivia Wilde and Jordan Peterson has been an interesting thing to look at. This is my first look at it. So let's go ahead and jump right in. This is talking about Olivia Wilde's movie that's come out. The movie chronicles the story of a young wife living in the 1950s. Oh, okay. So a periodic piece. That's cool. A company town named Victory. Florence's character Alice, who is the film leads, believe there is a sinister secret being kept from every resident by Chris, character's Frank, who runs the town. The film's director, Olivia, came at odds with well-known Canadian clinical psychologist and author Jordan after she revealed in a chat with Interview magazine that Chris's character was based on an insane man, Jordan Peterson, who is a pseudo-intellectual. Shots fired. Wow, across the bow. So I find that the wording of Wilde's character description of Jordan Peterson to be questionable. In fact, the way that she portrays him and speaks of him sounds like someone who saw a few clips and came up with the wrong conclusion, which many people do, even myself. I am definitely no person who is unable to, look at something and go, oh, that must be the correct thing, because sometimes the internet is very easy at making you believe that something is real. So one of the things that I thought was real and it turned out it wasn't was when The Weeknd, supposedly got implants and had facial reconstruction for a music video. Turned out that it was just a stunt to promote the video, and it was just prosthetics for a video. And I thought he had actually undergone surgery. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's the way the internet is. Unfortunately, like people can, say things that are incorrect and things that are completely wrong or misconstrued or misguiding. And a lot of times it's really easy for people to capture that as, a factual thing. And so I think it's kind of important to kind of keep a more centristic approach until you've found all the information. Then, especially when you look into the political realm, it's nice to see the right and the left sides, as well as, the liberal part of it, and to try to figure out where you fit in that realm. Maybe it's an amalgamation of a couple of things, and maybe you're more left on some things than right on some things. And, being a person that feels like a more of a moderate conservative, like I'm more centristic because I do have beliefs on the right and the left and maybe considered liberal. It's important to kind of come up with your own decisions. It's good to figure out where you're at on your beliefs on things, because that'll also help you out to figure out who you're going to vote for in the upcoming elections. So Peterson's obtained bachelor's degrees in political science and psychology from the University of Alberta and a PhD in clinical psychology from McGill University. After researching and teaching at Harvard University, he returned to Canada in 1998 to permanently join the faculty of psychology at the University of Toronto. In 1999, he published his first book, Maps of Meaning, The Architecture of Belief, which became the basis for many of his subsequent lectures. The book combines psychology, mythology, religion, literature, philosophy, and neuroscience to analyze systems of belief and meaning. And that was just a blurb from Wikipedia. I mean, not to mention, the tens of YouTube videos that he's produced, his multiple books and many speaking tours and interviews. I believe he has a website which also has certain courses that he believes that people should go through to kind of understand consciousness and critical thinking. This person has dedicated his life to teaching and cultivating minds. And for encouraging people to think for themselves, being a UK classic liberal, he is definitely somebody to definitely look at. And so with calling Jordan Peterson a pseudo-intellectual, in my opinion, especially with his credentials, not only do I believe it's dishonest from Wilde to say this, but I think it's factually incorrect. And this is just from the little information that I gathered. So the mother of two said, "We base the character on this insane man, Jordan Peterson, who is the pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community." Who know the incels? Olivia asked Maggie before explaining the term. They're basically disenfranchised, mostly white men who believe they are entitled to sex from women. Doubling down on her comments, the 38-year-old director said, and they believe that society has now robbed them, that the idea of feminism is working against nature, and that we must be put back into the correct place. She further expressed, Jordan Peterson is someone that legitimizes certain aspects of their movement because he's a former professor, he's an author, he wears a suit. Oh, so she kind of does go into some of his... yeah. Anyways, he wears a suit, so they feel like this is a real philosophy that should be taken seriously. For those who still don't get what incel means, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the term as a person who's usually a man who regards himself as being involuntarily celibate and typically expresses extreme resentment and hostility towards those who are sexually active. I think I want to interject here before I continue into this this outline. And the reason I want to interject is because feminism was very, very different when I was younger. Feminism was very, very different growing up, and especially different in the past, where it was all about empowering women and to encourage women to try different things. I believe it's really, really important to kind of decide whether you do want to be someone who wants to stay in the home and, take care of and raise children. But I understand we're kind of in a different society now. Sometimes those roles are reversed. where maybe the man stays home and the woman wants to go off and have a career. And that works really well for that couple because they've figured it out. And I think that's something that's important to speak with your partner about, with your spouse, with your husband and your wife. Like, it's something that you want to go over and try to figure out, okay, what's going to work best for us? Well, like if right now, I'm making $100,000 or so, yeah, maybe my wife would come home and maybe we would try adopting, or maybe we would try fostering again. That's definitely something we want to do. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do it naturally, which is really unfortunate. But honestly, like the way that feminism is kind of portrayed now, it's almost feels like an outright attack, not only on the traditional family, but definitely against men, very loudly, actually. We see this very loudly in TikTok and in shorts now on YouTube. And it's like, no wonder why men don't want to approach women or want to ask them out, or just say, hey, would you like to go get a coffee sometime? Or, hey, I was thinking about going to the movies. Would you like to come with me? I don't think it's necessarily about sex. Although I think everybody can agree that eventually we want that to become part of it. But I think what's really interesting is that I think most people just want to have a very intimate relationship with someone. They want to not only feel loved, but to, be loved and to reciprocate that love to that other person that they very much care about. Oftentimes I've talked to this about my wife, and it's just like, sex is just icing on the cake. I mean, what's really important is the relationship. It's the communication. It's the reciprocity as far as like, where we can help each other out and to help, support each other when we try to push for our careers or to advance through different things in life, and support each other and to hold each other up when we're down, and to, champion each other when we're at our best. Like, that's something that's really, really important. And I think it's a disservice to not only to men, but also to women with, all these different words like incels and misogyny. And it's just it feels like an outright battle against men, to kind of feeling like, oh, we need to put them in their place. And at the end of the day, it seems that as they get older, they realize that we need each other. These radical feminists. And so, it's something to really think about. And I believe very strongly the things that, Jordan Peterson talks about. I believe his 12-year rules to chaos, and, his follow-up book as well have been, very interesting, and, definitely I definitely feel like people should read them. I think you really get to know Jordan Peterson, not only just from the clips, that he shares, but definitely get into his mind a little bit more, as you read his book subsequently. But let's jump back in. So if Jordan Peterson is insane, then I am not a community college dropout. That was a great line. Yeah, I don't see as Jordan as an insane person. I actually see him as somebody who is a very relatively docile person when it comes to the way he uses his words. Like, he uses his words as a way to, to communicate with people in a way that allows them to figure out what's going on and how to proceed forward. And like, I feel like he's a really great communicator, and I think he's a great philosopher, honestly, of our time. But, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not, I'm not one of these intellectuals or anything, in my opinion. I'm just a community college dropout with a microphone. But I do believe that everybody has something interesting to say. Like, I really wish I had more people where I felt comfortable, and not only felt comfortable, but also had the technology and extra microphone and a better mixer, so I had better microphones, so I could have a fourth person here on occasion, invite different people and to ask them, because I feel like even the most normal, mundane, mid-level, poor, whatever you want to call people nowadays, I believe all people have things that are interesting about them. And I think if you had the opportunity to sit down with a stranger and talk with them for an hour and ask questions from each other, I feel like you would come to an understanding that this other human being is a good person and a good human being. And I think the other person could feel the same way from the other person sitting across from them. And I think what's important, I think that's really helpful for humanity, is these podcasts, is these long form discussions. And I think if we continue down that road and we actually sit down and we talk to each other, not try to understand each other through clips and sound bites, and actually have discussions, I feel like we would understand each other a lot more and a lot better. So in my opinion, it's clear that that Wilde is a classic feminist, and unfortunately a very radicalized one, as we were reading through her words. So I'm going to go ahead and put on my aluminum foil hat for just a few minutes. Now, my wife and I are under the belief that feminism is not only about controlling women and pushing them away from the fundamentalism of the differences between men and women and their inherent purpose in life, excuse me, but is also a way to control population. If women hate men and vice versa, then we will not continue the population. And I think what's really interesting about one of our past excuse me, sorry. One of our past podcasts is that we talked about how the population is declining, and it has been declining year over year. You know, small percentages, but eventually those percentages will get to the point where it's going to affect businesses, and they're not going to have enough people to put, to flip our burgers. There's not going to be enough people to build our homes. There's not going to be enough people to deliver our babies. There's not going to be enough people to do these things because, unfortunately, the population is in a collapse right now. Like, we're not growing as fast as we were. In fact, we're at the point now where we're going to have more older people than we will younger people in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And what are we going to do then? Who's going to run all these businesses? Who's going to consume all the products of said businesses? How is that going to continue our economy? Something to think about. It is also our belief that another reason of encouraging men and women to work or to have dual income homes is so that we pay more taxes to the government. As many can see with the news as of late, the money they receive from Americans year over year is never enough, and so they spend many billions, even trillions of dollars over that, borrowing more and more from other countries, printing more and more, much like we do with the credit system, which causes inflation and diminishes the worth of the American dollar. I swear I had another thing I wanted to add to this. With taxes. And I think something that's really interesting. It seems that when there are conservatives in the White House and administrations in the White House, it seems that when taxes are low for everybody across the board, even big tech companies, even people making, hundreds of billions of dollars, like, keeping the taxes low seems to put more people to work. And what's really interesting, especially with the radical left, is that the belief is if we tax more heavily on the people with making more money, then we will get more money from those taxes. And what happens is when you start taxing more heavily, especially on business owners, they're not going to hire more people. In fact, they're going to lay more people off. They're going to cut corners. They're going to stop producing certain goods and services because they are no longer able to afford those, and they have to do cutbacks, like they have to do rearranges and like reorganization of their companies. Like, having more tax burden on people who make more money unfortunately puts people out of work. And this is where, one of my beliefs, and I think that, I don't know if this is a conservative view or not, but I do believe in a flat tax. And I believe those taxes the majority of them should go to our local communities. So, flat 10% for each individual, no additional taxes on a business, just tax whatever income they make. and whatever those individuals make within those companies. So you don't have to worry about sales tax. You don't have to worry about additional taxes on businesses. And then the majority of the taxes will go locally. So 7% to state tax and 3% to the federal tax. So obviously the federal organization needs to be cut drastically, in my opinion. I feel like we should have a federal government with a little f and a little g rather than a big F and a big G like it is right now. It's definitely the BFG. And what I believe is that if we do that, then that'll also bolster people to spend more money, as well as businesses to hire more people and to, increase the ability to have these certain things where they can pay people more. I think it's really important to back the dollar with some kind of precious metals. I believe we should probably go to that. I know that's been a rather long time. I think it's like 70 or 80 years or so since we haven't backed the dollar with, with gold or something like that. I think that would be something that's really important. And then also talk about, maybe cycling out this whole credit thing, because unfortunately it's nice for people to borrow on credit, but all it does is increase the cost of things rather than, so you end up paying more for them anyway. So it's like this whole system is kind of backwards. And so I don't know. I digress. These are different views that I have on this kinds of things. So let me go ahead and take my aluminum foil hat on and let me proceed through these next few points. So days after Olivia's interview was published, Jordan hit back at her. Speaking on the National Post, the clinical psychologist said, "Now Chris has a reputation as quite an attractive man," and he is an attractive man, Chris Pine. "So that could be worse." The speaker further said, "I also hope that Chris Pine at least does the sartorial splendor of my very formal public wardrobe justice as he pillories me in the latest bit of propaganda disseminated by the woke, self-righteous bores and bullies who now disseminate Hollywood." Wow, clapping back. Shots fired. Really, I do believe, much like in any other instance, such as work or school, that you sit down and have to speak to each other and talk through your disagreements. You will find someone you can relate to, or at least come to civil understanding. Assumptions never get anyone anywhere far. So I think it would be really interesting if they had a podcast, and there would be somebody that's a mediator. I would even go far to say, let's put him on Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan would be a great mediator. But if we put Olivia Wilde, on one side, and we put Jordan Peterson on the other, with Mr. Rogan himself being the moderator, I think it would be really interesting to see what unfolds over the next 2, 3, 4 hours that would transpire. Because I really think, I think Olivia Wilde would kind of start to understand like who Jordan Peterson is and how he is. He feels to be such a treasure to especially to young men, and especially women who agree with the things that he believes and he philosophizes about. So when Piers read her statement about him, Jordan replied, "Sure, why not? People have been after me for a long time. Since I have been speaking to young men, what a terrible thing to do," he says, rolling his eyes. Jordan began to get emotional and said, "I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice," as he became visibly more emotional. And that's because, especially, men, and especially white men, seem to be the marginalized right now, and to see so many people out speaking towards them. And it's like, oh, if you're a white man, then you have no say in things. You can't speak about my body because you're a white man and you don't have a say. It's like, really? We can't have an opinion? Okay, that makes sense, right? Doesn't it? No. God, it's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are, and certainly many young men are in that category, he exclaimed. And you get these casual insults like these incels. What does it mean? He further reacted. It's like these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Just to interject here really quick. from I've been watching some of these different things from that Pearly girl on YouTube, but apparently if you want a man who is tall, if you want a man who is attractive, if you want a man who has a good personality and it's pleasing personality, and if you want a man who makes over $100,000 a year, you're talking about less than 2% of all men. And when you get that picky, like, and you know, let's say it's split in half and 50% of the world are women and 50% of the world are men, and those 50% of the women are trying to be attracted and attractive to 2% of men in the world, it might be interesting to think about exactly what you really want. Because if you're waiting for one of those men in the 2%, you may be waiting a long time. And there's also some belief that, you know, over 40% of women will be single by the time that they're 40 or 50, that they will be alone and single, not have any prospects and not wanting to have a prospect over the next 50 years. Now, hopefully that number doesn't continue to grow and we don't get to that point. But that's definitely something to think about. Women like be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your man. Fair enough. But all these men who are alienated, it's like they're lonesome and they don't know what to do, and everyone piles abuse on them. He said, explaining his position on the subject. So if you ever want to see someone who has been victimized by the radical leftists of the world, you know, you literally cannot look much further than Jordan Peterson. Despite the attacks, he works through those emotional tempests and moves on just like the rest of us. And honestly, you know, especially him, and I'm sure his family have gotten, you know, much hate because of his positions, especially when it comes to compelled speech or forced speech, who he definitely vehemently disagrees with forced speech, and that's what made him who he is today. He literally monetized woke left ideologues. Like it's kind of impressive when you think about it. I think what is interesting is how small the percent of men. Okay, I just went over that. Now I agree with you that you should hold each other to certain standards, but you should also be able to live your lives and be who you are and become what you want to be within that realm. I think that's something that my wife and I had to navigate, because at some point it was like I kind of felt like I was, you know, kind of being nudged over to one direction, and she felt like she was being nudged over to another, and it got to the point where we just like, well, we just need to like kind of let each other do our thing, and it seems like that's what's working really well. Because there are differences, and especially when you're in a relationship, it's important to champion those differences, to celebrate those differences. And I think, you know, they say happy wife, happy life, but unfortunately that also makes the man in the situation miserable. So you kind of have to obviously have a give and take. Sometimes you do have to sacrifice, you know, on one side or the other, or both have to do something. And that's something to think about when you have a relationship, is sometimes you might have to give and take. Unfortunately, you can't just take. That won't end well. It is difficult in this day and age due to low salaries for high standard jobs, as well as the artisan world of trade seeming to go down in many for employees. Yeah, I think the average median income for Utah is somewhere around $30,000 or $40,000 for one person, and that's not very much money. That's very difficult to have, you know, a 2,000, you know, square foot home, you know, having a 2.5 kids and a dog, you know, which is the normal for most heterosexual couples. And most of them are not able to have all of those things reasonably, you know, making $60,000 a year collectively. There used to be a day where one income would buy and own a home, a car, not only the necessities of life, but be able to save for investment as well as retirement, even having leftover funds to bestow a large lump sum onto your progeny. That's something that people don't think about anymore. Like we talk about retirement, we talk about saving up for, to invest, we talk about saving up for medical, we talk about saving up for, these wonderful trips that you want to go to. But, there was a time back in the day, where you would have a lump sum that you could bestow on your children's children, and we just don't do that anymore, unfortunately. Like, we don't make enough money nowadays, and it's the money that we seemingly are making is getting smaller and smaller, especially when it comes to credit lines, especially when it comes to inflation, especially when it comes to the cost of living. All of these things take a part in that. And unfortunately, when you're in this space and the inflation that we are today, it's definitely affecting the bottom line when it comes to average Americans. And not only average Americans, like, it's definitely decimating the poor, and definitely keeping them even more poor, because they can't make it if they go and try to, wash part-time dishes over at Chili's for 25 hours a week, because Chili's doesn't want, just giving an example. This is just an example, where Chili's doesn't want to give, medical benefits. So they just hire everybody part-time, so they don't have to fork over that extra money, so they could pocket more money, because they're having a hard time with their overhead. And the real sad part about this particular article, about Wilde's words that only breed more discontent and malice towards anyone, is not on board with the woke narrative. Yeah, that's all that it's doing. That's all her narrative is breeding, which is unfortunate. Okay, so Fox News states that Biden not only knew of his son's misleadings, but many have been involved as well. So this is pretty short. The new whistleblower documents revealed that the current president has been aware of his son's business arrangements and may have been involved in some of them. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley said Monday, suggesting the FBI has voluminous evidence related to the potential criminality of those ventures. Grassley, Republican from Iowa, sent a letter Monday morning to Attorney General Merrick Garland, FBI Director Christopher Wray, and U.S. Attorney for Delaware David Weiss, detailing new whistleblower allegations that the Bureau is in possession of significant, impactful, and voluminous, that's a wonderful word, evidence with respect to potential criminal conduct by the president's son, his president's sons. Weiss has oversight of the president's son investigation. Grassley said the FBI has a series of documents in its possession related to information on Mykola Zlavchevsky, the owner of Ukrainian natural gas firm Burisma Holdings. His son sat on the board of that company. The documents in the FBI possession include specific details with respect to conversations by non-government individuals relevant to potential criminal conduct by the president's son, Grassley wrote. So what is interesting is that if the bad orange man had a son, that he and himself had been involved in criminal conduct, you better believe that he would be impeached and placed in jail immediately. What is strange is that it took over 2 years to get to the bottom of these dealings, and while I know the investigation is still going on, my bet is that the current president will not be indicted or impeached, because why hold people responsible for their own actions in this day and age? Because what are we living in right now? We're living in the buck never stops here. That's what we live in right now. So what happened to the laptop, as well as its contents? And what's strange is that the FBI misplaced it. He added, it is unclear whether the FBI followed normal investigative procedure to determine the truth and accuracy of the information, or shut down investigative activity based on improper disinformation claims to advance of the 2020 election. It is also unclear whether U.S. Attorney Weiss has performed his own due diligence on these related allegations, Grassley wrote. Grassley and Senator Ron Johnson, Republican, led an investigation into the president's son beginning in 2019 and found that Obama administration officials knew that the current president's son position on the board of Burisma was problematic and that it inferred in the effective execution of policy with respect to Ukraine. So if I may put back on my aluminum foil hat, I believe that this furthers one's suspicions that federal funded organizations such as the FBI are following the radical left narratives, as well as suppressing key evidence to implicate the current president and his administration and his son, or anyone connected to the Democratic Party, i.e., I don't know, Hillary Clinton, as she is still free. Apparently, is she still free from the whole email debacle? Yep, never prosecuted, never indicted, never held accountable for her actions. So after the current president left the vice presidency, the summary makes clear that the president's son and James, I don't know if it's his other son, worked with the CEFC and affiliated individuals to compensate them for what past work and benefits they procured. Grassley wrote, referring to the low bankrupt Chinese conglomerate CEFC China Energy. Citing the summary, Grassley said that the president's sons and their business associates created a joint venture that served, I don't know if it's both of his sons or if it's an uncle or whatever, a vehicle to accomplish that financial compensation. The joint venture was known as Sinohawk Holdings, a partnership between the CEFC chairman Yi Jianming and the sons. Sinohawk was 50% owned by One Holdings LLC and 50% owned by Hudson West 4. And the worst part about these allegations is that if they are true, then our current president has been colluding with communist parties. This is about as anti-American as you can get. That's freaky. The Justice Department's and FBI's continued silence on these matters is deafening and further erodes their credibility, Grassley wrote. Simply put, enough is enough. The Justice Department and FBI must come clean to Congress and the American people. Yes, we need transparency. Excuse me. With respect to the steps they have taken or failed to take relating to the Hunter Biden investigation. Grassley demanded information from the Justice Department on the president's son investigated by October 27th, so Congress can perform an independent and objective review. The current president has repeatedly denied speaking out to his son about his business dealings. He has also denied since the 2020 campaign trail having any knowledge about or involvement in his son's business ventures. Hunter's currently under federal investigation for his tax affairs. Fox News first reported in July that the people had reached a critical stage. That the probe, has reached a critical stage. In that federal prosecutors were weighing whether to change Hunter with various tax, foreign lobbying violations, false statements, and more. So this is why, in the spirit of transparency, what we continue to release is this kind of information no later than a few weeks or at the most a month, so they can get through it and take the appropriate action. So like we're literally just about 2 years of this stuff going on. And do we have all the information from the laptop? I mean, I don't even know. They may be lucky enough to hold it until the election, hoping for a Democrat to win, which at this point is looking less and less likely with the president and his administration's current polls. This is where I believe it's really important to look at these things and to be objective about these things, because facts don't have feelings, remember? Because if these things are happening and these individuals are not held accountable, well then why shouldn't anybody else not be held accountable for those kinds of things? And it begs the question, especially when I feel like everything's being thrown, including the kitchen sink, at the bad orange man, to try to catch him on something, to kind of hopefully get him in prison or get him indicted, or, you know, keep him in litigation, to have him look bad for the upcoming presidential race. And, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be, you know, orange man versus old man again, old versus old again, I guess I should say. I don't know what's going to happen. It's just really funny to see these things happen. I feel like the political theater, this is probably, honestly, everything that's been going on ever since the orange man has been put into place as the president of the United States. It seems like the political theater has had its best season over the last like 6 years. It's been absolutely bonkers, and it's been hilarious, and it's been sad, and it's been funny, and it's been scary. This is probably the best reality show we've ever seen in our entire lives. I just hope, though, that we can get through this and we can figure out what's really going on. What's going on with Mar-a-Lago? What's going on with the Hunter's laptop? What's going on with the administration? Are they colluding with China? You know, are they having some issues with the CCP? Are they, you know, benefiting from gain of function research overseas? Like, what is truly going on? Like, why can't we have the answers to these questions? Is it because, unfortunately, these answers to these questions and the truth of it all would terrify us, or maybe it would put the current president and the administration in a very precarious situation in which there might be impeachment involved? I honestly don't know. You know, there's a lot of questions going on, especially when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement and the Antifa. There's definitely some questions going on with the $90 million that they've accumulated since their inception, and in these different extravagant homes that this, you know, the creator of this whole thing has purchased. There's definitely something to say for individuals where there's definitely, when people are on the correct path as far as like the left narrative, like their voices are amplified where those who disagree with them are diminished. And it seems to be this whole cat and mouse thing, trying to, you know, who's going to take over and who's going to suppress who next. But what's really interesting, what I've found anyways, is as of late, is that the conservative and Republican, you know, side of things, you know, they're starting to come out of the woodwork. Like, these individuals are starting to find certain things and certain truths and certain evidences that, you know, paint a very, very different picture of the things that we have seen or we thought we understand. And so that's why it's really important to not just take everything by face value. You know, and what's really sad is, as I've listened to, you know, podcasts that are more left leaning, especially the best of the left, you know, they had this whole episode on how conspiracy theorists, when they suggest to you that you should do your own research, that's, you know, that's conspiracy. Like, that's disinformation, you know, that's misleading, you know, that's trying to control people. And it's so funny because it just seems like a reasonable thing to say, hey, do your own research, like, look these things up. You know, maybe you find something that I missed, and I'm sure you're going to let me know in the comment section down below. And from my family to yours, good night. Today's video is sponsored by viewers like you, so thank you. If we earned your subscription today, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button, click that damn bell, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a content release. The best way to support the channel is to like this video, share it with family and friends, and don't forget to leave a comment down below. Send all of your topic ideas, articles, and video links to theperiodicreview@gmail.com. All of our links are in the description down below.